Hey guys, Mustached Tom here to review the movie Mickey 17. Now, I have not seen any trailers for this, so this sort of popped out of the blue for me. I only saw it because I saw some videos popping up about recommendations about it and other people reviewing it more so. So no trailer exposure whatsoever, so this sort of went under the radar, at least for me. Anyway, let's dive right in to the movie as objectively as possible. So, the movie starts off following, well, Mickey, as it follows his narration as he's starting in the snow, and one of his allies comes to get him, or rather, comes to get a flamethrower, but instead goes to leave him to die. You see, Mickey here, the one that's being left in the snow, for every time he dies, as we'll later discover, is reprinted due to the technology they have in space. Apparently this is something that was allotted on Earth. We learn later on that someone tried to use it to help in their own murder intent, so they left it to space travel, and cloning technology would only be allowed on space. So it would be his job to, through the exposure of said space, to die and be reborn through the printer to help them collect blood samples so that they could inevitably reach another planet, potentially terraform it, or do whatever it would take to live on said planet. So indeed, he was sent out into the irradiation area of space. So this allowed the other people to get the intel. He was not insured for this, but the only reason he was doing it to begin with is that he got in this business with a loan shark where he owed a great deal, and that this loan shark in particular would come after him since he was already late on his fees. So he fled to space to become this. Not really reading the paperwork through, but just sort of shuffling and rushing to get this done, rather. So it shows us this process of the scanning device. It's like the thing that currently scans bodies. Like that's essentially what it is. And instead of you going in, it's a clump. It builds up the cells and it builds up the body exactly how it was when it was scanned in the first place to extract another version of Mickey. And of course, this would only be done when Mickey was confirmed to be dead. So we do see that we do get flashbacks of the first Mickey, and how he immediately fell in love with this lady named Sasha. Or Nasha, I forgot which one it was, but I'll just call her Sasha because I don't remember if it was the first or second. But apparently, within the confines of space, their food is kept limited. I guess sexual behaviors were also going to be banned due to some sort of calorie intake process, which is interesting because one thing I thought about in the whole pro-life, pro-choice, argument is if you took every abortion that has ever happened in our American history, and all of those have been undone, would the U.S. have become overpopulated? And that is a question I consistently keep wanting to ask myself, and more so importantly, anyone who's pro-choice, because I think that that would lean itself into a greater cascade of issues, from job opportunities to housing, which were already in crises and had been in crises for both of these in the past, the job market, crime, due to poverty, and poverty leading to said crime. So yeah, obviously this is sort of alluding to, they're in a much even more confined space. Obviously America is significantly bigger, but nonetheless, they'd be free to repopulate once they arrived on the planet, via having space again to do so. So we learn how some of the other Mickeys have died. 12 through 6 all got, the 12th one got infected, and so as more and more came out, up all the way until 16, were infected, and then eventually through that process a vaccine was allotted to them, which brings us to Mickey 17. We see these small monsters, which they call creepers eventually, and which we catch up to the beginning of the movie, where he is dragged outside by one of the bigger creepers. It seems like it just wants to be left alone. It seems like, due to all the evidence, it seems to defend itself and doesn't really seem to, again, be on the attacking opportunity, but that will come into effect pretty heavily later on. So as he's walking back, he hitches a ride back to the base. However, another version of him, Mickey 18, is already born. Now this leads to an issue. Apparently, due to what already has happened on Earth with the murder clone incident, they had decided if there are over two versions of the same person, that both would not only be killed, but the memory of that being, which was stored in a brick, I guess, somehow, whatever, science fiction magic, whatever nonsense, allotted them to store the core memories of Mickey. So 18 is born, and we start to see the distinctions between the two, as we see that 17 certainly fears death, and 18 is starting to expel upon the more murderous route outward towards the people that he has come to hate along his past lifelines, including the very leader of this entire expedition, this failed politician who brought them up there in the first place. Perhaps a little mockery of one Elon Musk, him and his paid Twitter, because that's not free speech. Just, if you come into any of my videos, I'm always going to tell you the truth about that. It's not paid, it's not free speech. That's a fact. It stopped being free speech the day Elon bought it, and he did the blue check marks. You have to pay to do certain things of messages and all that. That's cutting off free speech by a paywall, so it's not free speech anymore. So that's just a fact. Anywho, enough balking what should have already been exploited all throughout the news, but no one's brave enough to say the quiet part out loud, I guess. But here we are. Here I am saying it. I don't care. In the process, Sasha hooks up with 18, assuming that 17 has already died. So she's been hooking up with each version, accordingly to, assuming that the process has gone unabated, essentially. But 17, while almost getting to her, gets sidetracked by another woman named Kai, who pulls him aside after this awkward meeting he has with said leader of this group. He's fed this vomitous type food, and then is given a vaccine, all experimental, more of this stuff going on into him. So he eventually makes his way back after the fact. After making his, he gets kind of pulled, as I mentioned, into Kai's room. She almost gets intimate with him, but she rejects that offer because he still has feelings for Sasha. So he gets back to 18, in which Sasha now sees them both. She marks 17 and 18 respectfully. And she wants both. She sees them as, the same person. And Kai discovers this. So 18 gets mad at what 17 is explaining what happened at the diner, or dinner, or whatever. All the while, they brought in this rock sample that they've cultivated from the planet. It has one of the creepers inside of it, and this causes everyone in the vicinity to freak out, because they have no clue that the creature is innocent, or rather defenseless, rather. So, 18 goes in for the kill. As I mentioned, he had that murderous intent. He tries to kill the leader. He's put down. Simultaneously, he gets caught with 17 as well, so the whole multiple thing gets out. So, they're gonna do the whole killing him permanently thing now, is the idea. But some of the people mention, one of the doctors mentions how he puts together that the creepers saved him. They kind of keep alluding to that. Meanwhile, one of his friends gets a message from the loan shark known as Darius Blake, who wants wants Mickey killed, essentially, for missing out on paying back. So the friend decides he's going to go through with it. He's trying to pick between 17 and 18 who are currently captured. He initially picks 17, despite 18 and him getting in the scruff of it earlier in the movie. I did miss out on that part, and I do apologize, but point being is that eventually, due to 17's will to keep wanting to live, 18 decides that he will pick himself. So he gets the other guy to come in, and alongside with Sasha to help get them out of their little prison cells. So instead of killing them immediately, the creepers have all accumulated outside, so the leader wants to use 17 and 18 to Mickey to go out there and see who can kill the most of these things. All the while, one of the doctors had made a translation device, so they help send them out. Meanwhile, Sasha saves the baby that is still held within the vicinity, while 17 and 18 actually don't really just go further and further out until meeting the leader of said pack. And it not only wants, as we will learn, to get the baby back, but wants a person to be taken for the life. Because apparently, I forget at which point in the movie, another one of them were taken at some earlier point in the movie, I guess. I don't remember that happening, but for the sake of argument, I'll just say it does. So, 18 eventually heads over to the leader, who's made his way outside to make this impassioned speech to look like the hero, to, sell this propaganda, and is eventually assaulted by 18, who presses his own button because the president had this device with the 17 and 18, and if he pressed either button, that one would explode. So 18 presses his own button, causing him to kill himself and the leader, leaving 17 the only one remaining. So with 6 months passing, we see them abolish the cloning process. Sasha wins as she upgrades from this police officer she was to essentially being the new leader of this group. And said printer was destroyed, and that is the conclusion of Mickey 17. And I will say, man, this movie definitely goes into the different aspects of cloning. What if you meet your own clone? Sharing life experience with said clone, and how that can almost reshape a new version of you, as this movie explicitly shows. It goes through that entire process of that fear of, this come to sense of you don't know, is that the end of your experience? Is that technically still you? Asking these questions that have definitely been asked before. And I think it's still one of the more, especially, with cloning had been done with other creatures and so on and so forth. I think, alongside AI being promptly being re-ushered into this, threatening or non-threatening way, I think cloning in very much the same way is very much a subject that has sort of been alluded to in previous years, and has now is clearly making a comeback here in this movie. And I do think I appreciate that. We have essentially this guy who feels like a nobody too on top of that, and even for someone who feels of that low significance in the totem pole of things, still feeling like his life has a sense of value, and, fearing death more equally or more importantly, is something that is interesting, because it sort of alludes to, with him being reset all those times, is that he does indeed remember the very feeling of what each death felt like, or the moments that lead up to it, or, I don't know exactly when that life would end, I guess is what I'm alluding to here. And yeah, and I'm trying to remember the video game that I was watching playthroughs of earlier. It's a slightly older game, but I think it begins with a D, but I don't remember off the top of my head. And it's very much a person who has been put in this robotic body, and with that, you have that memory swap aspect come into play at a certain juncture in that game I'm referring to, and that definitely alludes to this idea of continuation versus new life, and what all that means in that context. And Um, yeah. So, there is this bizarrety with the creature itself, placating that it knows Mickey somehow. That is the only mystery that is still pretty much unsolved throughout the movie. It somehow just knows his name. So I don't know what that means in the grand scheme of things. But before the devices were destroyed, the cloning devices, we saw that the lady of the leader had wanted to clone him back into existence, and it's alluded to that was promptly stopped before it finished. But it does leave into question of like, so they were probably doing other underground ones, probably. There may very still be more of them out there that now has entered into the facility of potentiality in this movie. So yeah, there's definitely quite a number of aspects of cloning in this movie. And hell, even the idea of like, with that in a different planet's context, again, when they're on their ship, about the whole like having sex thing, and I think that's why that's interesting for me, is because I know some history. I just happen to. I forget what year it was, but there was a certain time, I know it was before COVID, but there was a time in Japan's history where Japan was becoming overpopulated. So they had set out a rule, I think it was called the one-child rule or something, and if you had a second child, that child would have to be, like, exported essentially outward or whatever, in lieu of, say, just getting an abortion, which I'm not sure what Japan's laws are on that now, currently, if I'm being completely honest. I'm not up to date on Japan in that regard, but it definitely is interesting to think it, even from an American perspective. Americans obviously significantly bigger, and then you have, again, I go back to the number crunching concept of like how many abortions have there been, how many more lives would have been added to the pool within America if all of that was forced to happen, as it were, by law. Would we be overpopulated? These are things that I don't think pro-life people ever even consider. It's because it always comes down to like, there's like this whole religious aspect, and then like when the baby's born, and it's like, yeah, it always goes back to that conversation. I'm like, I'm kind of bored of that aspect of it. I'm just like, I've always been pro-choice, obviously, myself, so I'm just like, well, if I were ever in a debate, I would definitely bring this up. This idea that if abortion had always been, if it was always forced to, carry to term, what would that actually look like? What would the effects of that actually be if there were more people that were here, born in America, even prior to the whole border, quote-unquote, border crisis, because that whole shit is nonsense either way you look at it, due to what I've been seeing on the news at the very least. So there's a whole lot of shit going on. Anyway, that's all politics. As for this movie, it definitely gets the questions running about the cloning processes and extension of self, or if it's a new you, or if it's the same you, you know, if it obligates different personalities from you, is it now different from you? All of these things. So it definitely tackles, I think, pretty much every, the good chunk of what you can get out of a cloning concept. So I think this movie is really good. I would give it an 8 out of 10. So if you have not checked it out yet, consider doing so after that. Please feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. Also make sure to check out those links in the description. Also make sure to do the last one, which is join my Discord if you feel like joining that, and feeling free to collab, shield, all that cool stuff for free. And until next time, bye.